and on Wednesday we are discussing the nervous system. Okay. Up till now, you know that the joints, bones, muscles, and the vascular system. Okay. So now the remaining component is the nervous system. How the nervous system, the general aspects one can know, because this is a very important system which regulate your body activities. It is the generator, just like the electrical impulse, electrical generator we are having in our houses. Okay? So the electricity comes to our house, so we open the light, we have the fridge, we have the oven, every electrical appliances functions of when we open the switch of the electricity. So in the same way, we have the nervous system, which regulate the body activities by two ways, that is voluntary or involuntary. You know that. Okay, so we discuss the general aspects of the nervous system today, and then we discuss the spinal nerve, very, very important nerve, or the somatic nervous system, which is very important for your next block, that is the MSK block. Okay, so we will discuss that now in the second lecture on Wednesday. Okay, so I upload the presentation for second lecture after the today's lecture or maybe tomorrow morning. Yes? Yes? Voice is not clear?
Let's speak now. Like your normal voice.
Okay, now it's clear? No? Now it's clear now? Okay. So, in addition to the voice, do you see this cursor? Okay. So, I'm telling about the importance of today's and the next lecture, okay, because it will give the basic concept, the basic or the general concept for your understanding for your next block, okay, and the autonomic component for the coming blocks, for example, the GI block, this cardiovascular block, okay. So please concentrate on the understanding. If you don't understand, you can contact me after the lecture, okay. Now in the lecture, don't disturb me during the presentation, okay. So I'll give you the last 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes, where you can ask the question. You just write the question, okay? Now, these are the objectives. Now, can we start? Okay. These are the objectives under which we discuss today's lecture. Number one is the location and component of the central and the peripheral nervous system. After that, identify the structures supporting and protecting the nervous tissue, okay, or the components of the nervous system. Then discuss the components of the nervous tissue. It is more specific with the next lecture of histology, okay, with Dr. Oni. Okay. I'll just give you the idea of that, how microscopically the cells are classified, that's all. Then define the terms related, very important terms related with the nervous system. And finally, location component and the functional difference between the somatic and the autonomic nervous system, okay. Now, we start. Nervous system. Anatomically, it is made up of two components, the central and peripheral. Most of you already know it. Okay? Where the central is located? The central is located, if you just see here, within the cranial cavity and the spinal canal. What do you mean by spinal canal? When the multiple vertebrae, about 33 vertebrae in the body, when they join together, they create a canal from the base of the skull till the lower sacrum. Okay, so, or you can say the pelvic bone. So this canal occupies the lower part of the, or lower component of the nervous system, that is spinal cord. Okay, now within the cranial cavity, the brain is located. So we say that the central nervous system is made up of two components, okay, brain and spinal cord. Where they located? Within the cranial cavity and within the spinal canal. Okay. Now go back. Peripheral nervous system. What do you mean by peripheral? Means outside the cavity. Which cavity? The cranial cavity and the spinal canal. That is within. When the nerves comes out, means the electrical wires from the generator. Okay, the electricity reaches the electrical impulse or electrical component through a wire system. Okay, so these are comparable. These wires are comparable with the nerves of the bodies. Okay, so the nerves of the bodies are divided into two parts. Those arising from the brain, they are called as cranial nerves. They are 12 pair. Pair means 12 on the right side, 12 on the left side. Okay, so right and left. Don't make 24. Don't say there are 24 cranial nerves. No, there are 12 pair of cranial nerves or 12 cranial nerves on the right and the left side or each side. This is the correct answer. Okay. And then we have the 31 pairs of the spinal nerve. What does spinal word means? Those nerves which are emerging from the spinal cord. If you see in this picture, the spinal nerves are emerging from the, again on each side, 31 on the right side, 31 on the left side. Okay, so 31 pairs of spinal nerve. So simply as the name indicates, cranial nerves and spinal nerves. How many they are? 12 pair of cranial nerves and 31 pairs of spinal nerve. And in addition to this, we have the associated ganglias. Okay, what is ganglia? After 5 slides, I'll show you the picture that what do you mean by ganglia. Okay, it's a collection of the cell bodies of the neuron. Okay, so we discuss at that time. Clear? Up till here, clear now? Okay, now we move. Now, as the nervous tissue is a very delicate tissue, just like the any tissue, important or vital tissue of the body. So it is one of the vital and very delicate tissue. So it needs a protection. So the nature provided a protection to the nervous tissue, that is the brain and the spinal cord, by placing inside the socket of a very strong bone, the vertebral column and the cranial cavity. And then in addition to this, it will support it from outside by means of the skin, fascia and the muscles, and inside the bone by the membranes and the cerebrospinal fluid. That is the water cushion effect of the cerebrospinal fluid. So two factors are protecting factors within the cranial cavity and the spinal canal, and 3 factors are outside. Means 3 structures are outside. Means skin, then underlying fascia, and then the covering muscles. Covering muscles to what? Covering the bone, skull and the vertebral column. Muscles around the vertebral column. Muscles around the skull. Okay, so skin, fascia and skull protecting it. Then the bone. And finally inside are the membranes. Okay, so what are membranes? These are the membranes formed by the connective tissue. Do you cover the connective tissue, collagen fiber in the histology? Or not? Not yet. So it's a collection of the fibers. One of the fiber is the collagen fiber, most common. Okay, they form the protective and give protecting and the structural support to the organs and the body. Okay. So if you move to this, that this is the part of the brain. Now, do you see that it is covered by the membrane? This is the. These are the membranes. So there are 3 membranes. Just remember the name. Or if someone don't know the name, never mind. We go into the detail later on with the neurosciences. Okay? So just remember the name. Dura, then we have the arachnoid. I highlighted those names, and the pia mater. So the nervous tissue is closely associated with the diameter. Then we have the arachnoid, and finally the very strong double layer of the dura mater. In the same way, the spinal cord is also covered by the three membranes. This is the tough dura, then we have the arachnoid, and closely associated is the pia mater. Between the arachnoid and the pia mater, the vessels and the nerves emerges and the run. Okay, so these are the nerves. Do you see this? These are the nerves emerging from the, which nerve emerging from the spinal cord? What is the name of those nerves? Spinal nerves. Okay, so this is the spinal nerves emerging from the, these are the roots, collectively they join together and form the nerve. This will detail structure we'll discuss in the next lecture, Wednesday. Okay, so these are the protecting factors. Okay. In addition to this, between these two layers, pia mater and the arachnoid, the CSF, cerebrospinal fluid, runs, and that will give the Cushing effect. Okay, water Cushing effect. This is another protective factor. Okay, so this is the space where the blood vessels run and the nerves emerges out, and between these two, pia mater and arachnoid, this space contains the cerebrospinal fluid. Okay, so we are not expecting you the details of these things. Okay, the important thing at this level are the protecting factor. If you remember the name of the protecting factor at this level, that is more than sufficient for the general aspect of the nervous system. Okay, so overall, what does it means? That the brain is a delicate tissue, just like the heart, lungs, and the other tissues. Okay, it is protected naturally by the providing of support by keeping inside the bony sockets. What do you mean by the bony sockets? The brain in the cranial cavity and the spinal cord in the spinal canal. Okay, which is formed by the collection of the vertebra or joining of the multiple vertebrae. Okay, then outside the skull or outside the bone, it is protected by the surrounding muscles, fascia and muscles. And inside the bone, it is protected by the membranes, three covering membranes, dura, arachnoid and pia. And between the pia and arachnoid matter, a water Cushing effect is provided by the flow of the CSF, cerebrospinal fluid. Is this clear now? You cannot see the? Where? Okay, thank you. Okay, now it's clear now? Okay. So, at this level, I'm telling you that just keep in mind the protecting factors, name of those factors. Okay. So, the delicate tissue, the nervous tissue is protected by the placing into the socket of the bone, cranial cavity and the spinal canal. Outside the bony socket, it is protected by the skin, fascia and the muscles surrounding the body bone, okay, the skull and the vertebral column. And inside the bony socket, it is covered by the three membranes. Okay, which membranes? If you see the cursor here, the dura, arachnoid, and then the pia mater. Okay, don't read this periosteal and meningeal layer. Just remember the dura. At this level, dura mater, that is sufficient. Okay, when we go for the specific nervous system detail, then we'll teach you. Okay, So just remember these membranes, and between these two membranes, that is the pia mater and arachnoid, this gap. Do you see this gap here? All supported by the fibers, or covered by or filled by the fibers. In between the fibers, the cerebrospinal fluid, a water cushioning effect of the cerebrospinal fluid, protect the brain and the spinal cord. Now you understand? Okay. Now the next important thing, components. Components of the nervous system. We have the two type of cells inside the nervous system. One is functional and another is supportive. Functional means that cell, which is called as the neuron, is responsible for the integration of the journal or the action potential. Means electrical impulse. The activity is generated by the activity within the neuron. So neuron is the functional unit. Clear? Other than the neurons are the supporting cells. And supporting cells, what do you mean by the supporting cells? They are performing the different functions. For example, the nutrition, exchange of gases, or they are giving the mechanical support by providing the sheath over the neurons. Okay, especially the axons. Myelination, that is, the word is myelination. Myelination means the ensheathing of the axons. Okay. Or they are protecting, they play a role against the invading organism, immune cells, microglial cells. Okay. Or they are involved in absorption and secretion of the CSF. Okay, formation or absorption of the CSF. Or in addition to this, one type of the cell are responsible for healing process. Whenever there is an injury in the nervous tissue, that gap is filled by the one of the type of the glial cell. Okay, so glial cells are supporting cells. The detail you will study in the histology, the microscopy, when the concerned professor will teach you the microscopic detail. Because the cellular level is taught in detail in the histology. So at this level, you just remember one is functional, another are supportive. What are the supports? These are written here. These are the different supports. For example, exchange of gases. Okay. Then healing process. Then immune activity. Secretory and absorptive process, or myelination means covering membranes. Okay. And then the functional unit is no doubt the neuron. Okay. So we discussed some important aspects of the neuron now. As far as the structure is concerned, again the more detail, it is microscopic, but for the impulse generation, we'll just remember that it is made up of three components: the cell body, and the two processes, dendrites, it is written here, and the axon. And axon is myelinated. Do you see this myelin sheath around the axon? It is one of the glial cell, oligodendrocyte or Schwann cell, which provide this myelination inside and outside the CNS. Okay. Then the fourth component is the synapse. It is important to note here that synapse is not anatomical. It does not touches it. Okay. The synapse is physiological, means the gap is filled by the neurotransmitter. There are different neurotransmitters: acetylcholine, adrenaline, noradrenaline, and dopamine. Okay, so in the different steps, in the sequence of steps, you can just go through these. Okay, at this level, just remember there is no anatomical continuity between the axon and the dendrite. It is guarded by the gap is there, and gap is guarded by the or filled up by the neurotransmitter. Okay, and then the impulse will travel by floating inside the neurotransmitter from one receptor to the other receptor. Clear? Okay. So these are the components. The detail you will study definitely in the microscopy. Now, this is important part for the anatomical aspect, journal aspect. Okay. When you see the neuron morphologically, okay, then we say the neurons are three types. Structurally, it is made up of three types of neurons: multipolar, bipolar, and pseudo-unipolar. What do you mean by pole? Pole means these processes. Okay, so this is one pole, multiple dendrites, and one axon. Axon is always one, keep in mind. Dendrites vary from 1 to 2, 2 to 3. Okay, so this is the cell body. These are the dendrites, which is the incoming channel. The impulse enters the cell body by means of the traveling through the dendrite towards afferent. These are the different terms we use. Okay. Then impulse integrate inside the cell body and then leave through the dendrite to the effector organ, okay, or to the other neuron by means of the synapse. So multiple neuron multiple processes indicate that it is multipolar. Example, we have this anterior horn of the spinal cord and pyramidal cells of the cerebrum. Okay, just remember the example where it is located. Okay, so it is just simply the understanding and rectification. Okay, so multipolar. What are the sides? Anterior horn cells of the spinal cord and brain, cerebrum of the brain. Okay. Then second variety is the bipolar. Bi means two. One dendrite opens into the cell body and one axon leaves the cell body. So bipolar. These are called as special sensory neurons. Speak loudly. Yes, when the dendrites or the axon leave, dendrites attaches, so they create some elevation. Those elevations are called as poles. Means this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, this is 4, okay, and multiple so on. Here, if you see the cell body, it is only one pole attaching the cell body or touching the cell body. Okay, although the dendrites further divide into multiple branches, we are not concerned. But the pole means the process when touches the cell body. Clear? In the same way, the axon leave one only. Clear? Okay. So bipolar, they are called as special sensory. And you know what are the special senses in our body? The sense of hearing, the sense of vision, the sense of smelling, okay, and the sense of taste. So bipolar cells, what are the location? If someone asks you, the bipolar are special sensory neurons. So if someone asks you to write 2 examples of special sensory neurons, so you just say eye, retina of the eye, olfactory epithelium, taste buds, okay, and hearing epithelium or cochlear membrane. Okay, so these terms are new for someone's, but just if someone writes in the ear, in the eye, in the taste buds, and in the nose, at this level it is correct. The answer is correct at this level. If you say the eye, ear, nose, okay? And then in the head and neck region, in the head and neck block, we consider the right answer as a olfactory epithelium, taste buds, or retinal epithelium. Clear? Now finally, this is the third variety, pseudo-unipolar. Do you remember this pseudo-stratified columnar ciliated epithelium? What does this word pseudo stands? False impression. Very good. So if you look at under the light microscopy, initially it looks that it is a one pole. So it is wrongly called as the unipolar cells. But with the advancement in the microscopy, the scientists come to know that This is one pole, this is another pole, and they touches the cell body by means of a common pole. So it gives a false impression of unipolarity, unipole. But it is that is why it is called as the pseudo unipolar. Actually, this is the dendrite, one pole, and this is the axon. So impulse come from here, enters at the upper part of the pole, integrate within the cell body, then leave through the lower part of the common stem or pole, and then enters the axon. So it gives a false impression. So that is called as the pseudo unipolar neurons. Question arises where they are found. Dorsal root ganglion of the spinal nerve and the trigeminal ganglion of the cranial nerve, fifth cranial nerve. Yes. Bipolar. It is given a false name initially when the microscopic examination of these neurons are not under the light microscopy. When the advancement of the electron microscopy, it is seen that the unipolarity is only one pole is attaching on the cell body, but actually it is dividing into the incoming channel and outgoing channel. So it gives a false impression of unipolarity. So that is why these neurons are given the name of pseudo unipolar. Means a false impression of unipolar. Actually they are having both dendrites as well as the axon. Clear? So this is morphological, anatomical. Okay. So where we found they are special, they are journal sensory neurons, means touch, pain and temperature. Special sensory are vision, hearing. These are touch, pain and temperature. When you touch the hot object, immediately remove. When someone prick your skin, we just feel the pain. Okay, when we fall down, there is a cut in the skin, we feel the pain. So all those touch, pain, temperature. When the mosquito or the fly sit on the skin, we feel the touching. When someone touches our body skin, we feel the touching. So touch, pain and temperature. These are the journal sensations and they are found where they are the type of pseudo unipolar neurons. Coming. Actually, neurons are the terminals, receptors of the same neurons, superficial neurons. Is the neurons, okay? They are the nerve, they are called, called as superficial neurons, just call them the nerve terminals or nerve endings. Okay, so these are the terms. Okay. Now, other side, when the physiology persons are teaching you, they use the same neurons and they use the different words. Sensory or afferent neuron, interneuron, or efferent or motor neuron. If you see the picture, it is the same neuron. Okay, having the dendrites, cell body, and the axon. Okay, but what is the difference? This is functional classification. The detail they will teach you, the physiology, the functional aspect. Okay, but just to compare it, to understand you, give you the understanding of that different terms are using. This is the general aspect of the nervous tissue. Okay, so anatomically we are using the unipolar, bipolar, pseudo unipolar, but the physiology persons, when they are explaining the any sensation, any pathway, they are using the term sensory neuron, afferent means towards interneurons which are integrating. Okay, and then we have the motor neurons which are the effector organs, reaching the effector organs. So this is the sensory neuron. Taking the impulse means touch or pain, temperature. Interneuron integrated, send it to the brain and immediately call the motor cell bodies to contract the muscle to remove the hand. How? see this picture. Do you understand now? When someone touches the body, means hot object, okay, immediately a response comes like this. So this is a combination of the different sensations. How? The burn sensation, temperature, feel by the skin, nerve endings. Okay? These are sensory nerve endings. Take the impulse to the dorsal root ganglion, okay, which is a sensory root, pseudo-unipolar. Okay, do you remember? I just quote you the example of pseudo-unipolar in dorsal root ganglion of the spinal nerve. So this is the spinal nerve. It will send it to the spinal cord where it is integrated, and then orders are given to the motor cell bodies or motor neurons to contract a group of muscle, that is bicep, which causes the removal by contracting at the elbow joint or the wrist joint. So those muscles which are crossing the wrist and the elbow joint, they have been given order to contract and immediately remove. So do you see that, or do you observe that how the quick response is this? When I touches, immediately. This is the quick response. Okay, the detail we'll discuss in the second lecture. Okay, my second lecture on Wednesday, inshallah. Okay, so this is the classification of the sensory and the motor and the interneuron, okay, which we use as a functional aspect. Clear? So now we move to the picture of the neuroglial cells. Okay, in the previous slide I write the functions of the different neuroglial cells. Okay, so those functions, the neuroglial cells are responsible for myelination. You see the axon is myelinated like this in a crescentric pattern. Okay, onion leaves. When you cut the onion, you see the crescentric pattern. Okay, and then these are the microglial cells for phagocytic activity. These are the astrocytes for exchange purpose or for the blood-brain barrier. Okay, protecting means exchange of gases, exchange of nutrition. Then we have another astrocyte for the healing process, and these are the different glial cells for the exchange of the fluid formation and absorption of the CSF. Okay, the detail we'll study in the neuroscience. Okay, so this is just remember the name and its function. That's all. This is for the general aspect. Now we are going to observe those terms which you ask about the ganglia or the neurons. The first term is the gray and the white matter. Now, commonly in the nervous system, we find that when we see the cut portion of the brain, some portion of the brain appear darker. Okay? And some portion is pale or white in color. The portion in the direct in gray or observed gray, they are the collection of the cell bodies within the neuroglial tissue. Cell bodies, why? Because they have a nasal substance which appear gray or dark gray in color or black in color. So overall, whenever the collection of the cell bodies, the gray matter means cell bodies forms the gray matter. And axons and the processes are myelinated. Myelin sheaths are fatty tissue, means it is a fat-filled tissue. So whenever there is a fat on gross examination, naked eye examination, it appears pale. So in comparison to hair or the skin, you see that the hairs or the abaya are black and the skin color varies from pale to brown to white depending upon the complexion. Okay, so this is a comparison between this. The reason of blackening is the nasal substance which are located within the nucleoplasm. Okay, so within the means cytoplasm of the neuron, so nasal substance, they give the gray appearance. Okay, so these are the two terms which you get familiar in the future. Nucleus and ganglia. Simply the collection of cell bodies within the spinal cord or the brain. They are called as nucleus. Okay, cranial nerve nuclei or in the spinal cord, anterior horn cells or anterior horn nuclei, cranial nerve nuclei, or outside the CNS, means outside the brain and the spinal cord, collection is called as ganglia. Okay, so now you understand what is ganglia. The word ganglia means a cell body when outside this. So it is associated with the spinal nerve or the cranial nerve. One of the cranial nerve is written there, trigeminal nerve. There are 12 pair of cranial nerves. So 12 names are different. 12 names are different. Okay. One of the name which I quote the example is very common. It's a very big nerve supplying the face, head and neck. Okay. So this is called as the trigeminal nerve. Tri means three-headed. Trigeminal nerve. Ganglia means cell bodies of these nerves are outside the CNS. Or cranial nerve nuclei, or the different nuclei of the spinal cord, anterior horn nuclei, they are called as the collection of cell bodies within the CNS, that is brain and spinal cord, brain and spinal cord. So these two terms are very easy. Gray matter and white matter, comparison is clear. Nucleus and ganglia, inside and outside the CNS. Okay, clear? Yes. Can you speak loudly? Brain and spinal cord both have the gray and the white matter. Yes. Cell bodies are arranged outside in the brain and as a nuclei inside or within the center of the brain. So do you see this gray zone? And these cell bodies, they give the axons which are myelinated. So all those axons which are leaving through this, they travel through this white area, and this white area is called as the white matter. In the same way, all the cell bodies are located within the center in the H form gray matter in the spinal cord. They give the processes. Do you see these processes? And they are running in all directions. Okay, whether the afferent or efferent, and all these processes are myelinated. So that's why they are paler as compared to the nasal substance of the cell bodies. So this is called as the gray matter of the spinal cord. This is the white matter of the spinal cord. Okay, if you take the section of the brain, gray matter is outside and within the center, and in between is the white matter running in all directions and enters into the spinal cord, and from the spinal cord only the white matter, they come outside as axon. Now they relay in the cell bodies which are located in the ganglia, means they touches the dendrites at the synapse where the nuclei are located, not in the brain and the spinal, but in the peripheral ganglia. Do you remember? The peripheral nervous system is made up of cranial nerves, spinal nerves, and associated ganglia. And I quote the example of dorsal root ganglia there. Okay, so this is the ganglia, collection of cell bodies. Now they want to reach the destination, very remote muscle. So how they just release in that ganglia, and then they create another axon which reaches the destination. Okay, so it is called as the first order, then relay, second order neuron. One neuron, synapse, second neuron. So the further detail you will understand as you come into the nervous system of the means the next block, that is the MSK block, and then further the coming blocks. Yes. gray matter and nucleus is simply the cell body collection, okay, inside the brain and the spinal cord. When they collect millions, they give the impression of dark area. When so many class students, 500 class students, they sit together, close together, especially the females, all abayas are giving the black impression. When you see from a very height, if you see it from the higher in the Mataf area of Khana Kaaba, you see the female areas are restricted to appears with the dark area. So what are they? There are multiple females, thousands of females. They are separate. So in the same way, these cell bodies are separate. About wearing the abaya, when they collect together, they give an impression of a local area. And that local area is called as nuclei. When this impression is outside the CNS, this black area is called as ganglia. So collection of cell bodies creates the nuclei and ganglia inside and outside, okay? And the appearance of the nasal substance, appearance of the blackening within the brain and the spinal cord, they compare it with the sheathing of the white sheathing of the axons as a white matter and gray matter. Clear now? Now, simply everybody knows the brain regulate the body activities by means of two systems, whether you're voluntary or involuntary activity. Examples are very clear, everybody knows. If you want to throw a ball, you can throw it. If you want to walk, you can walk. This is voluntary activity. If you want to run, you can run. If you want to sit, you can sit. Bend your bodies at the joint. You can sit. When you want to lie down, you can just make the position of lie down. So all these voluntary muscles and the voluntary activity is under the somatic nervous system. Derived from the somas. Somas are taught you in the embryology, first 3 weeks, okay? Which you are doing, I think, second week or coming third week of development. Autonomic nervous system. Other hand, you know that your heartbeat when you are approaching the exam in the morning, before the TBL, everyone heart start beating fast. Okay, when you receive your password for the exam, you know that 20 minutes. So this is one of the component of system. On the other hand, when the exam is over and you score very well, you know the answers, now you relax and your heart beats and blood pressure decreases. This is the other component. Okay, so these are the two components which are equal and opposite to each other. What they are? They are equal and opposite. One is increasing when you are excited, sympathetic system. Another is just holding it, and then it will manage to bring it to balance. So normally we say the heart rate of a person, a normal adult person, is around 72 beats per minute. When this person is excited, happy, approaching the exam, heart rate increases up to 80, 90, depending upon the excitement. Okay, when he or she is relaxed, okay, want to see the movie or want to take the food, and his heart rate brings to normal. So this is a check and balance between two. Okay, and this is regulated by or create a system which is called as the autonomic nervous system, which regulates your cardiovascular activity, which regulates your respiratory activity, which regulates your digestive activity. You take the food, forgot it, and after 4 to 6 hours, again you feel it. Okay? Everything goes inside, digested, chewy, masticated, then absorbed. Waste product is stored in the rectum and then evacuated. In the same way, urinary system, all the toxic material, they just filter automatically And all this autonomic system is regulated by the sympathetic and parasympathetic activities. Clear? So this is and this is important to note that one of the part of the brain, that is hypothalamus, regulate this autonomic activity. Okay, the detail we'll discuss later on along with the different blocks. Okay, the basic concept I just told you now. Okay, somatic system detail we'll take in the next lecture, but just the glimpses. Okay, because we are running out of time. So it is the regular means autonomic means the somatic system which regulate the body under your control. Okay, there are spinal nerves and cranial nerves. We already discussed 31 pairs and 12 pair of cranial nerves. They supply the head and neck area, eye, ear, and those mouth, taste buds, okay, tongue. All these are the cranial nerves. Cranium, all the head and neck associated structures supplied by cranium. Body structures are supplied by spinal nerve, related with the spinal cord. Okay. This is the response we already discussed. These are the nerves emerging from the different cranial nerves. These are the plexuses from the detail. We'll take it next week, okay, next lecture. Okay, so this is just for your idea that when you just go through this presentation, you prepare yourself for the somatic system for the next lecture. Okay, so emerges from the spinal cord and they supply the through by forming the plexuses, except the thoracic region where they directly supply without forming the plexus. So this is cervical plexus, this is brachial plexus, these are the intercostal nerves directly supply, then lumbar plexus and sacral plexus and the coccygeal plexus. Okay, so these are the nerves which supply by forming the plexus and directly supply. Okay, this is one of the picture of the plexus which is very important. Frequent questions have been asked in the exam. Okay, and the detail will take in the MSK block, okay, in the upper limb region. In the same way, the picture is placed here, lumbosacral plexus. Again, for the important for the lower limb and the, okay. So the detail will taught you in the lower limb, okay, in the MSK block. But just the important thing is that these are the foramens through which the nerves are emerging. They form the plexus and then gives the nerves and supply the different muscles and the joints and the skin. Okay, so they are the mixed spinal nerve, means they are sensory as well as motor, and they also take some sympathetic fibers, autonomic fibers. Okay, so they are mixed spinal nerves. Now, the location of this is important. Location, sympathetic and parasympathetic are the two components of the autonomic nervous system. Okay, they are acting equal and opposite to each other. Okay, so just now sympathetic system is located between T1 to L2. Okay, means what does it mean? T means thoracic 1 vertebra, means all 12 thoracic vertebra, and the first 2 lumbar vertebra in the lateral horn. Okay. So what is lateral horn? Just I give you the idea. If you see the spinal cord, this is anterior horn, this is posterior horn, and here we have the lateral horn. Okay, so detail later on. Okay, so just remember this location. While in comparison to this, parasympathetic system is in the 4 cranial nerves nuclei and the lateral horn of 2nd, 3rd and 4th sacral segment. Okay, now how you understand this? Now for this, just remember this picture. This picture is not for your exam. Okay, this is just for the understanding of the location. Okay, because detail is too much and we'll take this detail in different blocks. For example, heart and lung in the cardiopulmonary block, GI block, genitourinary block, and head and neck block. Okay, so don't get confused. Now, I'm explaining T1 to T in the lateral horn. Do you see this lateral position? So these red marks indicate the lateral horn collection of cell bodies from L2, T1 to L2. And then they create the nerves or they generate the impulse that is called as the sympathetic impulse for increasing the heart rate and supply the increasing or decreasing activity to the different autonomic organs. In the other way, craniosacral means 4 cranial nerves, 3rd, 7th, 9th and 10th. Okay, just remember at this level, craniosacral means 4 cranial nerves. No, it's not important to remember the name of the cranial nerve. Just say 4 cranial nerves and the sacral segment, lateral horn of the 2, 3 and 4. They create the parasympathetic action potential. So in this way, the cell of origin, they create and form, give the check and balance between the overactivity and underactivity. Okay, so this is called as the autonomic nervous system. Detail, the first detail will take in the MSK block. Then according to the GI system, we take the detail of the autonomic nervous system of GI component, cardiopulmonary component and genitourinary component. Clear? So this is the way of understanding in detail. Now this picture is important. This gives the idea, means it is a fight and flight reaction whenever you are approaching to any emergency. So this is the system which is active during the emergency condition. Approaching the exam, fighting with your friend, fighting or playing football or any game, boxing, okay? So because you are under stress, and stress means increasing the sympathetic system. Okay? When this is over, you win the fight, you win the game, you go to give a good exam, then you relax and immediately go to the food area, take the good deal of a McDonald's and then you start watching the movie and have a good sleep. So it is a rest and peace. Okay, so this system is responsible for giving you the check and balance for rest and peace. Okay, so these are the two systems which are acting equally and opposite to each other, and they are under the heading of autonomic nervous system. Okay, so this is just the brief review of this. Okay, the detail will take later on in the system wise. Now, important point to remember here: spinal nerves are voluntary nerves. When the organs or viscera of the body are supplied by these autonomic nerves, these are given the name of splanchnic nerves or visceral nerves. Okay, so somatic nervous system or somatic nerves means spinal nerve, cranial nerve. They are voluntary nerves. When the nerves, fibers, axons arises from the autonomic cell of origin, autonomic ganglions, autonomic nuclei, autonomic nervous system, and they are responsible to supply the organ of the body, the heart, lung, or the viscera of the body, or they are called as the splanchnic nerves or the visceral nerves. Okay, splanchnic and visceral nerve. So don't get confused with these terms. Okay, so examples I quoted here. There is another term. There are some intermediate ganglions, means just like the ganglion associated with these cranial nerves and spinal nerve, the ganglions are associated with the splanchnic nerves also. So the fibers which are before the ganglion, they are termed as preganglion. Pre means before. Then the synapse here, and the fibers after the ganglion supply the organ or the viscera, they are called as postganglionic fibers. So the term pre and post, okay, is used before and after the integration in the ganglion. Okay, so these are the terms. At this level, just remember the term, not more than this. Inshallah, for autonomic nervous system, we start taking from the MSK block. Okay, so Finally, I just quote some examples. It is the emergency system, increases the heart rate and increases the blood pressure, and at the same time your ability to take the food and digestion is inhibited. Okay, do you notice that during the approach, before the 1 day or 2 day, your appetite decreases? You are more concentrating on the learning process rather than eating process. Okay, now reverse will happen. What happens? When the exam is very good, now you relax, parasympathetic activity generates. Now your heart rate slows, blood pressure comes to normal, your peristaltic increases, peristalsis of the GI, and you feel hungry. Now immediately one can go for the outlet, have a good meal, take the food, go home, okay, and then watch movie and a good sleep, and take a good sleep, okay. So this is opposite system. So these activities are important, can be asked in the examination, okay. Now with this we finishes today's presentation. Now you can ask me question and prepare this presentation and the new presentation before coming to the next lecture. Just read it. I uploaded today in the evening in the Moodle, so you can just go through it and prepare it, because that presentation and that lecture is important for the MSK block, for the understanding of the spinal nerve and its supply. So please take it seriously. This is very important. You feel comfortable in the MSK block as far as the nerve supply is concerned. Yes, one by one, can you ask the question? Yes. Celiac area. Celiac means it is associated with the viscera. Dorsal indicates back. Okay. So in the next lecture, when I explain you, do you see that this is the front view, anterior root, this is the posterior root or dorsal. So with the posterior root, a ganglion is associated. So this ganglion which is associated behind is called as dorsal root ganglion. Okay. Now, the ganglion which is associated with the trigeminal nerve, fifth cranial nerve, it is called as trigeminal ganglion, you asked me at that time. Clear? Now, the celiac ganglions, they are associated with the GI, celiac trunk of the artery. Okay? So, celiac word used or referred for the GI block, GI components. So, celiac are the different ganglions which are associated and supplying with the GIT. Okay, so no, it is just in relation to that. Okay, so in the same way, trigeminal ganglion. If the another cranial nerve is vagus nerve, which supply the heart, so vagal ganglion, glossopharyngeal ganglion, in this way. Okay, so ganglion is a common term, and if it is associated with one then other than, for example, your name is different. Males are common, but names and